Hey there, folks. My name's Ian Levinstein, and because I don't put out enough episodes, even though this was going to be an extra point, welcome to episode 209 of Comic Timing. And I'm sure Brent somewhere is going, wait a minute, you did a numbered episode without me, but whatever. I'm sitting here in person with Kris. And, hey, Kris, what's up?
Hi, it's Kris and Ian, and I'm pretty sure that Ian and Brent have an extremely abusive relationship at this point.
I'll probably see him in Florida in a few weeks anyway.
And podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
You should podcast, and you have Martha on the podcast.
I don't think Martha is going to be on the podcast. What I think is going to happen is exactly the same thing that always seems to happen, which we're going to sit down in a park in the middle of Auburndale, and we're going to podcast, and there's going to be swings in the background, and maybe occasionally a train will go by, and it'll be great. It'll be good times.
Martha would just be like, I don't want to talk about superheroes. We'll talk about the best superhero movie.
What is that voice?
That's what she does when she's all like, she starts talking really low and really fast when she's annoyed at you. I might not be living with her, but I've definitely noticed this.
Point well taken. Yeah,
I'm sure if Martha were to listen to this, which she won't, she'll just be like, that's not the way I talk. That is not the manner in which I speak.
What are you saying? That's madness. Yeah. So this episode is mostly going to be about the Star Trek. And clearly we're going to talk about the best Star Trek series on TV right now, Orville, New Horizons.
The Orville, New Horizons. We've been waiting for it for, 2, 3, 4 years before the pandemic.
God, yeah, at least 3 years.
It was supposed to be on Fox, but Seth MacFarlane was so busy with his gazillion other projects that he didn't get around to it. So Fox was just like, screw you, you're canceled, and Hulu picked it up. And it's honestly for the better, because now I'm not going to say this is the greatest thing, but they can curse, they can have longer episodes.
Which they have, definitely.
Yeah, no, the episodes are definitely stretched out. It kind of reminds me of how the original series episodes are like 52 minutes long.
Right.
Which stinks when they rerun them on TV because they feel like they have to cut them down to 42 minutes.
And there was a time even when they were released on DVD and it wasn't even the full versions until a couple years later when they finally did so.
Grrr.
Yeah, but with this, though, the wait was definitely worth it, I think. It's weird how good the Orville has become. And I say that because it started off and they were getting their footing and they weren't quite sure how Family Guy they were going to be and Star Trek they were going to be.
The biggest problem that Orville had in its first 2 seasons was that, if you remember the ads before it debuted, that it was supposed to be basically Family Guy in space. That's the way it was advertised. It was going to be this crazy send-up of space shows.
I don't think Seth ever wanted that.
No, it's very clear that's not what he wanted. He wanted to do, it is Star Trek LARP. It is his cosplay.
Yeah.
And the show in its first 2 seasons was definitely a corrective. It was like, well, okay, here's an episode I don't really agree with, so we're going to do it our way. I mean, the fact that they did an episode with the Isaac and Dr. Finn dating, which of course is something that happened also on Star Trek Next Generation, that Data dated Jenna Desora, and that ended up not working out. Honestly, for kind of stupid reasons, is that she was expecting more than Data could ever offer. While with Dr. Finn on the Orville, like, she knows exactly what Isaac can offer. It's basically like, okay, so this android is nice to my kids, we have great sex, I don't see a problem here.
Yeah.
She's not expecting him to be the most emotionally available person.
No, because he literally cannot be.
Yeah, she's not going to get pissed off. This is something that always bothered me with Jenna Desora. She's like, Data, what were you thinking of, while they were kissing? And he's like, well, I was calculating several recipes for Spot's cat food and, realigning this and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, he's an android. Of course he's multitasking. I multitask when I kiss sometimes, so I don't see a problem there.
And meanwhile, they even went on to do essentially the Borg plot with Isaac's people. What's the name of
they're the Kaylons.
The Kaylons, thank you.
And when they get to the planet and there's just the cavern of skulls, and that's when you're like, oh shit, this is not a funny show anymore.
This bad.
So the new season has basically picked up from that, where it's like this horrible thing happened, so it can't just go back into the lighthearted, fluffiness. I know my father was complaining that it was too dark, and I'm like, you know how many freaking people died in the season finale?
Yeah, seriously.
I would actually be annoyed if they just shrugged it off and had a bunch of fart jokes. Like, it's not like the Orville doesn't have its occasional jokes. Honestly, anything with Bortus is just classic, like the sex addiction and the episode with the cigarettes.
Oh my God, yeah, and that came back multiple times.
Oh God, yeah.
Not to mention, we finally get to hear Bortus sing this season.
Yeah. It's been pretty great. Yeah, what's nice is that they are definitely picking up on threads that were in the earlier seasons, and I think that streaming lets them do that kind of stuff. When it's network, you never know if someone is just flipping through the TV. You don't know, like, maybe you might want to try to pick up new people. Yeah. I mean, with Hulu, they know whoever's watching it is someone who's been watching it.
They signed up.
They're not trying to get a new audience, though that would be nice to get a new audience.
Well, sure. And I certainly hope that they have in at least one way or the other, because I'd like for the show to continue.
You can watch the first 2 seasons and then, decide if you want to check out the new season. Yeah. So that's a plus.
They're even listed on Hulu as Season 1, Season 2, New Horizons.
Yeah, I know that Seth MacFarlane had an interview and he's like, yeah, it didn't take much to convince me to give it the new subtitle, because she said it's basically like a different show and we want to and I'm reading that article thinking, no, they put the name on it because it's easier to sell a show with a different name. Oh, yeah. Like when you're selling stuff overseas, that's the way Pokemon works. That's why every season of Pokemon has a different name, or where every season of Yu-Gi-Oh! Had a different name.
I look forward to the next season of Orville, which would be Orville Johto Adventures, and then or Johto Journeys, and then we'll go on from there to the Sinnoh region of Orville, and then we'll just keep rolling that way.
I thought you were going to make a JoJo's joke as opposed to...
No, I don't know enough about JoJo's to make JoJo's jokes, honestly. Like, I know that a lot of my friends are fans of JoJo. I've yet to get really on the JoJo train. It looks crazy. It looks bonkers.
It requires you got to get to the 3rd story arc. Yeah. I did not get to the 3rd story arc.
Well, yeah.
So every JoJo's fan is like, no! And I'm like, I'll get there eventually.
But this season of Orville has dealt with some really serious shit. I mean, as your dad mentioned, like, I don't like how serious it's gotten, but it's certainly gone into some very developed scenarios.
Not developed is probably not the word, but it is very philosophical, very deep. The fact that the first episode dealt with suicide as like very real thing, and I've talked with you about this before, Ian, how the Orville, that episode about suicide, was able to really leverage the fact that it's a sci-fi show. Yes. Where you can actually do the thing is, what if somebody killed themselves and then weren't dead? I don't even mean like a suicide attempt. It wasn't a suicide attempt. Isaac just straight up killed himself.
He achieved his goal.
Yeah, and they were like, well, he's a robot. We might be able to bring him back. So... I mean, I have very mixed feelings on that because I do kind of respect people's like bodily autonomy, and I'm like, I don't know if that's cool, but at least Isaac seemed to have changed his mind, so I'm not gonna. It was a sad episode though, but
it's the question of also like does the robot have the right to do that as a living robot?
Well, there was a character though. Was it the one that was with not Gordon? What's his face? Engineer guy.
Oh yeah.
And she was like, my culture is very much like we support this. Like it's fine. Like suicide is like it's your body to do with what you want. Right. Yeah, why am I blanking on that character's name? It's because he hasn't had much to do this season, which is really awful.
Not Reggie, is it?
No. The actor's Jay Lee. I just can't remember. Okay. I'm blanking. I'll probably pick up my phone and look in just a second.
More than likely, yeah. But and I mean, along with that, I mean, the most recent episode that I saw was their first real play at time travel, and.
Well, I mean, they did the time travel with Kelly.
That's
when
true.
the past Kelly came to the future.
Right. Well, the actual, like, our time travel, like, or at least pretty close to it, because they were in, the year 2015, or that they were aiming for?
Yeah, first of all, it's Lamar.
Yeah, thank you, Lamar. Thank you.
I think that doesn't help that Jay Lee and Lamar are not too far, like, letter-wise in my mind.
Yeah.
It's the first time, I think, the whole ship does the time travel thing.
Yes.
And, they screw up and they end up in the wrong year, and
they wind up 10 years further along.
They were aiming for 2015 and they ended up in 2025, and they find out that their crewman Gordo is like, as people like him, has been stuck there for 10 years and built a life for himself. I talk about how the show definitely feels like a fanfic corrective. And this felt like Seth MacFarlane. I know that he didn't write the episode, but it feels like the show's response to the infamous Tuvix episode.
Oh, yes.
Because I said on Twitter that this episode had really strong Janeway killed Tuvix energy. And I love that the Janeway killed Tuvix is like a thing. Like it's almost a meme. Like even AOC, was joking about it. So I was, I'm hoping that people watch this episode and they can kind of see the parallels, because it's basically where you have to make a decision for the good of the crewmen, the good of the crew in general.
Right. And
you're still, in the end, you're still losing. You're still the bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, do you separate Tuvix, or do you keep Tuvix as whatever Tuvix has become?
Yeah, somebody is dying no matter what. It's always the wrong answer no matter what you do. And that was the problem in this episode of the Orville, was that he was happy and they're like, you can't stay here. And they're like, well, if you're not going to come back, we're going to have to just erase this entire timeline. Also
building on the lore of the show, because this was the girl that Gordo fell in love with in Simulation.
Which is also a fanficky thing that the show does, because it reminded me of Geordi and Lee Brahms, his little holodeck girlfriend.
Yep.
Man, that guy was incel before we had the word incel, Like,
definitely.
Incel, I think, started in the 80s, but, like, it wasn't popular until, I would say, the past decade and a half.
Yeah.
And it was just, Geordi is just, like, the poster child there. He's just creepy.
Why don't girls like me? Oh, Geordi.
Because you're kind of needy? I don't know. And you hang out with the weird android dude.
But I think by far my favorite episode of this season of the Orville is one that I feel like in a lot of ways was the most meaningful, which is the gender reassignment episode.
I guess you could say it's the trans allegory.
Yeah.
Wherein Topa, who was born female but was genetically altered to become male, because all Mocklins are supposed to be male, and then Topa realizes something's wrong. And I find it interesting, not just that it's a trans allegory, but the fact that it's exactly what happens to intersex children all the time. In that, an intersex child might be born with like both, male and female genitalia, or they might be like underdeveloped genitalia or whatever. And the doctors make a decision to basically assign the kid a gender, to like alter their genitalia. Yeah. So like if they were born with like an underdeveloped penis, they might just turn it into a vagina, and the thing is, like, there's no like pressing medical reason to do this. It's about conformity. It's about, this kid being able to go into a swimming pool, I guess. But as if a society we were more tolerant, that wouldn't be an issue. And the thing is that some of these people who get this surgery when they're kids end up growing up and they notice something is off. Yeah. They realize they're basically trans, but they wouldn't have been trans had their family just left everything alone and let them develop naturally. And
then they actually have the choice for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, at least, we for now, you can still make those choices. I mean, I don't want to... it's funny to say, I don't want to turn this political, but it's Star Trek. Star Trek is inherently political.
Which people tend to forget, even though it's always been. Yeah.
Yeah. But with, I'm just thinking about the fact that they're trying to pass all these laws and everything so that you can't transition at all. But there's always an exception for operating on intersex kids. And I'm just like, oh my God, you guys, I mean, we know they were obvious. Yeah. We know they were turfy, obvious.
And here with Bortus's, born a girl, reassigning to a boy and realizing that something's wrong, that something doesn't connect.
Yeah, well, the episode, it tries to trace the emotional journey that a lot of trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, it's a whole spectrum, dude.
It is, yeah.
And because the thing is, Topa starts thinking about suicide, she starts, when he is asking like, oh, like, Isaac, what is it like to be dead, blah blah blah, and that of course raises a lot of alarm bells. And anybody who's aware of the current quote unquote trans debate, would know that like suicide factors into it a lot. So it was a little heavy handed, but the thing it was really lovingly done, because everyone in the episode is so supportive except for Clyden, because Clyden is the worst.
Yes. Clyden is the bigot of the show, basically.
Yeah, Clyden has been a jerk every season. I don't understand how him and Bortus got together in the first place.
I don't know.
It's incredibly frustrating.
And now, now we don't have to worry about that moving forward, at least for a little bit, as Clyden is.
I'm sure it's going to come back to bite him in the ass.
I'm sure.
I'm sure, like, Mocklin divorce is probably complicated and involves probably a lot of spitting or something,
The one of my favorite parts about that episode, too, is where they basically recreate an episode
Well, the scene from the first season with About a Girl was the name of the episode, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And they had to. The thing is, they wanted to show that clip, but they needed different angles of it, so they had to reshoot the whole thing
with a whole bunch of the actors and putting actors that were still on the show and in older versions of their uniforms and compositing the whole thing. It was amazing to see what they pulled off.
A ridiculous amount of work for a segment that probably lasted like 30 seconds.
Yeah, but well worth it, I think.
I mean, yeah, New Horizons. It's like we have a budget now.
It is, and also definitely the most next generation of the sci-fi shows that are on television right now.
Yeah, my friend, who's a big Trekkie up in Canada, he said that basically Strange New Worlds is doing the original series, but the Orville is our next generation analog.
Yes.
And, I mean, we kind of need it because Star Trek seems afraid of going back to the 24th/25th century. Because if you look at the shows so far, we had Discovery, which is set in the 23rd century.
Yeah.
And then Picard was set in the 24th, on the verge of the 25th. But, the first season takes place, far off from anything else. And season 2 was a time travel thing.
Yep.
And then, so now Strange New Worlds is back in the 23rd century. So the only shows that are actually set in the 24th century are the cartoons.
Well, and also now season 3 of Picard will be in that.
It'll be in the 25th century.
25th,
I mean, it's basically going to be like a sequel to Next Generation, which really wasn't supposed to be in the first place.
Although I guess they figured we only have so much more Patrick Stewart that we'll probably be able to have.
He's old. He needs to retire. The man is tired and... I just want him to just, sit back. If he's still living in Brooklyn, I just want him to sit in a lawn chair and play with his pit bulls, I'm
pretty sure he is still in Park Slope West. I checked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he just he shouldn't have agreed to Picard in the first place, to be honest. He's just too old for this shit.
Can we mention the animated just because you did? Lower Decks is terrific. It is... exceeded every single one of my expectations.
I believe that Lower Decks was the best Star Trek show of the current batch until Strange New Worlds debuted.
Yeah.
And mind you, I still think Lower Decks is capable of doing a lot more. One, I don't think they're as constrained as Strange New Worlds is. Because Strange New Worlds, no matter how many new characters they introduce, they're still constrained by the fact that it is a prequel to the original series. So there's certain characters you cannot kill or do anything horrible to.
Right.
You still have to get rid of certain characters at certain times, and of course we all know, and you're gonna laugh because you've been waiting for me to say it, of course we all know that Pike ends up in the beep beep chair.
The beep beep chair.
I love saying the beep beep chair because I hate the beep beep chair. The beep beep chair is the worst goddamn thing.
Hold on 1 second. Beep, beep, beep. 3 beeps means the beep beep chair sucks.
Yeah, it's like 1 beep for yes, 2 beeps for no, or something like that. I don't know. It's really stupid.
Yeah, but I mean, Lower Decks, I think does a good job of humanizing crew, while at the same time also presenting scenarios that are inherently Star Trek with just basic humor thrown in there.
It's basically in-universe humor. It is the characters acknowledging that they live in a ridiculous universe, which they do. Let's be honest about that.
Yeah.
It's a universe that has characters like Trelane, who's basically a Q in a fancy, outfit. He was never established as a Q on screen, but there is a Peter David book that you can read. I think it's Q Squared, where they're like, Trelane was a Q.
Yeah.
It's the universe where it's like, oh, hey, we just met the Greek gods. And mind you, that's the original series. You could be like, oh, they didn't do crazy stuff after that. And I'm like, really? Did you ever see the episode where Tom Paris and Janeway turn into space lizards and have space sex?
I sure as hell did.
Leave their space babies on the planet?
I sure as hell did.
I really need that to come back. I need it to come back on Discovery.
Voyager did some weird shit, man.
Yeah, I rewatched all of Star Trek during the pandemic. Yes, the pandemic's still going on, but I mean, we're talking about the first year one of the pandemic here.
The we don't leave our houses era.
I rewatched all 800 goddamn episodes of this stupid ass franchise that I love very much.
Yes,
and it messes with your brain, and you start to realize it's full of crazy people.
Oh, definitely. No, and Janeway, one of the craziest at times.
Oh my god! Delete the wife.
Access is interpersonal, subroutines, familial characters. Delete the wife.
Modification complete.
Pleased to meet you, Mr. Sullivan.
You can actually dub that over if you can find the clip. Just put it right over this me talking right here.
There's coffee in that nebula.
Yeah, that one's pretty bad too. Yeah, when you first saw that episode, you got so excited.
Oh, yeah.
Like, when you see an episode that's in a meme, you get super excited.
Which is all the more reason why I'm glad that holographic Janeway always has that cuppa, like, right there.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I'm impressed by that show, too, by the way.
It's very good. I mean, it's obviously, it's a kid's show.
Name of the show again? Sorry, Star Trek.
Prodigy.
Thank you. Yes.
The ship is not named Prodigy. It's actually the Protostar, because we find out it has a Protostar in the middle of it. It is actually supposed to be set in the 24th century. The technology doesn't quite line up. I'm hoping they'll explain that. They did reveal in the finale, the season finale, not series finale, or rather the half-season finale.
Yeah, it's more like a mid-season finale.
That's what we do now.
Yeah, because that was like, what, the 10th episode?
It was episode 10.
Okay.
We found out that the Protostar had definitely got thrown back in time. You know, and I remember interviewing the Hagemans, and I was just like, please, I don't need time travel. What makes you think it's time travel? I'm like, oh, God. I know they won't listen to this. I don't want to punch you guys in the face, but at the same time, maybe there's a little part of me that kind of wants to be like...
If we get a little bit of Chakotay...
I'm fine with...
I'll be all right.
I would prefer Robert Beltran somehow redeem that character.
Yes.
Chakotay was... kind of terrible.
But the one thing, I mean, yes, we do get Admiral Janeway, by the end of...
Well, now he's Captain Chakotay, which is fair, because everybody apparently got promoted a little bit. Mind you, he had left Starfleet, so he really shouldn't be entitled to the rank, but they're being nice. They're just... Well, what I find interesting is you also notice this with Lower Decks as well.
Yeah.
Is that the Dominion War basically gives them room to promote people like crazy.
Certainly. Yeah.
So if you go, oh, that isn't realistic, and you're like, no, it suddenly makes sense that Janeway got promoted to Admiral right away. It makes sense for Chakotay to just be made a captain even provisionally, I
want to know when him and Seven broke up.
They should never have gotten together in the first place.
I know,
Everyone
because
agrees
he belonged with Janeway.
Yeah, Ian.
I built a bed.
Yeah, you love that. That's another one of those when you meet something that somebody's talked about for years. Is I always used to talk about that episode where they're stuck on the planet together, and Janeway's like, I have to find a cure for this disease that is keeping us on this planet, and Chakotay's just like, I built a bed. He is so domesticated. It is so adorable.
We have to get ourselves off this planet. I just built us a nice thing in the backyard.
I built you a canoe, and I built traps, and I did this and that, and I have a monkey friend now. I'm pretty sure there was a monkey friend.
There was. I figured out how to barbecue. You want some steaks?
Yeah, he was just all ready to go suburban dad.
Oh, absolutely, and she just would not have it.
That's what kind of kills me is I actually would love Chakotay to just have found somebody and gotten married and just had kids, because that's clearly what he always wanted. He wanted to be space dad, but unfortunately Sisko already had that job.
Exactly, yeah. And now moving on to what's been of late, I have not watched the most recent season of Discovery, so I can't discuss that
We can just skip over it. It's good.
Yeah.
I think that Discovery finally found its footing, mostly because, one, it embraced a more episodic structure. Like, it has standalone adventures, but it still does, the season-long story arc. It's, of course, now it's been set in the 29th century?
I believe
30th
so.
30th century?
Yeah. I think it's the 29th.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with it. It's just my only issue is it's like, wow, that's kind of a grim future.
With Voyager Mark V as a member of the fleet or something like that.
I think it was Voyager J, which is a crazy ass letter. And there was also the USS Odo. I know, not Odo, Nog.
Oh yes.
You got super happy. I know when
yes, indeed, because that was shortly after the actor died.
Yeah, so they do that, but I like the idea of just making Nog this character you never see, you just hear about how awesome he is. I think that's the way it needs to go.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Strange New Worlds is, that's the main topic of our conversation.
It's a show that has finally changed a lot of people's minds, because Discovery has always been a controversial show. Yes, there are the bad faith people who are like, Star Trek got woke and it sucks now. I'm like, that's not the problem with Discovery.
It was woke in the 60s, enough said.
Yeah, we just watched the Balance of Terror, because so we've gotten only a 10-episode season, which is kind of disappointing, to be honest, because even Discovery got a longer first season.
Agreed, yeah.
But they're already in production on season 2, so hopefully we'll get it in a year or whatever, and, we'll kill time until then with every other show, because Lower Decks announced its premiere date today. It's the 23rd of August,
Yes, I believe you are correct about that.
So we'll finally get to see that.
I mentioned to you, too, that for Season 2 of Strange New Worlds, they built a brand new bar deck, so we'll have more, intimate conversations in a bar
Is it so they can reenact the fights from... Oh, no, I'm thinking of... Sorry, that was Starship, it was Starbase, K7 that had the bar fight.
Yeah, no, they're looking for more 10 Forward-esque action.
Yeah, because you get to have the characters interact, casually and stuff, and it's nice.
Up until now, they only had a half set they were using for the mess hall. Which they used a lot of filters and
you
CGI
can get away with a
for.
lot these days.
Oh, definitely.
With using CG, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
But Strange New Worlds, I honestly have had more mixed feelings on it than other people. I've seen people say, this is perfect, the show is perfect, the show is amazing. And I don't really agree with that. I did write up for Engadget the season premiere. This was before I left Yahoo entirely.
Yeah.
And I didn't hate the premiere, but I did hate the fact that Pike basically ends up giving this speech to the aliens about war bad, bombs bad, don't be like us. And they actually show footage of January 6th, which was, funky. And they also came under fire for they were showing riot scenes on the planet, and it turns out they were actually from a 2014 riot in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And it's don't do that. I mean, to be fair, the episode was shot probably last year.
Yes.
Though they could have re-edited that scene.
Oh,
and
certainly.
It's just a few seconds of stock footage, basically.
It's also kind of the only episode that went that far.
It's an outlier among the show in general, because the series premiere is the only episode you would watch where you actually need to have seen Discovery to understand what the hell is going on.
Definitely.
Because the events of the premiere are influenced by what happened on Discovery, where they had the big fight, and then Discovery had to go back in time, and nobody remembers Discovery, existed or whatever. But of course, what happens is that the images from that fight, the energies and stuff, were seen by the people on this planet, who then proceed to develop warp. But instead of a warp engine, they build a warp bomb.
Yep.
It's fine, but I found it a little too preachy for my liking, especially Pike gives his little speech with his hair, which gets higher and higher every episode.
I think the Pike parts were easily the best parts of the episode. And mind you, I mean, I feel that way about a lot of episodes of the show, because obviously, the way Kirk is our star, Pike is definitely the star of Strange New Worlds.
I mean, it's interesting because they try to be remember when Discovery started, they were this is the first show where the captain isn't the main character. And the thing is, not every show, I don't feel like the captain's always the main character in every show, because it's really an ensemble piece. It's hard for me to look at, honestly, Voyager and be Janeway's totally the main character. It doesn't feel like that all the time, because there's also a heavy emphasis on the Doctor at times, and then then it'll delve into the other characters.
Yeah, and ensigns that never get promoted. Exactly. Yeah.
Sigh. Yeah, poor Harry Kim.
I know.
But with Strange New Worlds, yes, it's definitely Pike's show. That's because Anson Mount oozes charm.
Oh, hell yeah.
And he's got his beautiful Pike's Peak, as they call it, the hair.
Delightful.
It is very lovely hair.
It really is.
I mean, I was a little lukewarm on the first 4 episodes. It was episode 5 that really turned me around on the show. I know you caught up on yesterday.
I mean, I've been catching up all week pretty much.
Yeah.
I had only watched the first episode up until about a week ago. Yeah. And watching it all in sequence, I can see how the show builds a lot better. I don't think there was an episode of the bunch that I disliked. Straight out.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I thought it was shaky at first. Episode 5, which was the absolutely stupid as all shit episode, and I loved it. I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Spock Amok, where Spock swaps bodies with Supreme.
So good.
It's so dumb, but I was like, this, as my brother says, he goes, no, but sometimes Star Trek is supposed to be dumb. It needs to be dumb.
No, you're right. You're right. And that's where some of our strongest episodes really come from.
Well, this season, the 2 dumb episodes were that one and the Elysian Fields, the one where everybody's in a fantasy book.
Oh my God. That was easily the most next generation of the episodes.
Yeah, it was pretty dumb, but it was at least the characters were aware that something dumb was going on.
Well,
so that
2 of them were. Yeah.
Because it was Hemmer and Mbenga.
Yeah.
And the book that it was based on was written by Benny Russell, Cisco's alter ego and everything.
Yep.
So that's kind of interesting. It's like, did he manage to get out of the insane asylum?
I hope so.
Yeah, we don't know. Maybe he wrote it beforehand. He wrote a children's book that apparently is still alive in the future.
Maybe.
Like, people are still reading it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I didn't, again, not every episode was a hit with me. I was not a big fan of the Alien episode. It was fine. Like, it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, when I was speaking to Raph about it, and Raph was like, he found it just like very paint by numbers and everything.
Agreed. And also for that to be the catalyst for a decent, well, not a decent amount, but for two members of the crew, major changes happen. I mean, for one thing, we lose our engineer.
Yeah.
For another, Khan's descendant, La'an, who I've enjoyed all season long.
She's fine as a character. She's fine. She didn't need to be a descendant of Khan, because the problem with that is that it seems like everybody knows who Khan Noonien Singh was, even though in the original series episode they just like completely forgot about Khan.
You're right.
Like, it makes no goddamn sense.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of especially creators, like a lot of our friends will be like, oh, continuity's a trap, you don't need to follow continuity. And the thing is, like, if you can tell a good story, but it requires you to break continuity, that's fine. But at the same time, you have to keep some continuity. I mean, like, Simpsons has a very loose continuity that they'll occasionally ignore.
Yeah.
But honestly, you'd be pretty pissed off if suddenly you watched it and they had, like, 4 kids out of nowhere.
Sure.
Or, like, Bart was suddenly 10 years older. Or, like, because continuity isn't just about being a slave to every last detail. It is about your basic paint by numbers, like, like Batman is a character who, is avenging the death of his parents by becoming, like, the hooded, like, avatar of justice or whatever you want to say. I know I'm being overly dramatic.
No, but I get it. Like, yeah, like, at the same time, though, did they forget who Khan was, or did they not know what he looked like?
I believe it was both, because honestly, if they had remembered who he was, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because they should have known what the ship was.
Right, that's true.
There's a bunch of really beautiful people in capsules on this random ship that we just found.
Botany Bay?
Yeah, the fact that it's called Botany Bay, like, all of these should have been red flags, and they're just like, derp, derp, derp.
Yep.
Like, it's better to believe that they just didn't know. But it's like, no, everybody knew who Khan was, you know, and it's just like...
They just apparently didn't know what the ship was until they knew, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, that's a relatively minor thing. I think what bothers me is when they feel like they have to hook it into continuity when you could just make new characters.
And see, that's a good point, because we have gotten some new characters, on the ship. Ortegas.
Everyone loves Ortegas.
Ortegas is fantastic, and I need to know what the hell happens to Ortegas, after the Enterprise, because clearly she deserves whatever she can get. But then there's also characters that never really got their time of day in the original series, like
Mbenga is the big one,
Mbenga,
because he's only in like 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah.
He doesn't really get to do much. Chapel gets fleshed out more, but the problem is that there's a mismatch between the Chapel of the original series and Strange New Worlds. It is a completely different character. The one on Strange New Worlds, played by Jess Bush, is almost like a tomboy. She's very playful, a little, mischievous. They are setting up something with her and Spock, because you remember that on the original series, she definitely had a thing for Spock, but it was always unrequited.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me, is I was like, they're way too friendly. I don't know if they're gonna... It's like, if the show is hinting that maybe they'll date and then just become like,
platonic,
exes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also that the character looks completely different, because Jess Bush is definitely a pants wearer, and she's got like her kind of bleach blonde, but it's like stringy looking hair, while
it's not even bleach blonde, it's like white almost.
That is what bleach blonde is. A
step beyond to me.
It's just it looks, I mean, to be honest, it doesn't look great. I mean, not that original series Chapel's hair was much better anyway. It was like this ridiculous, again, like platinum blonde bouffant. The thing is, the biggest difference to me is that the Strange New Worlds Chapel is a tomboy, and the original series Chapel is she's a femme. She's very delicate, and I mean, I've noticed that with a lot of the series, the new Star Trek series, is they almost seem to be afraid of being feminine. I was about to say feminism, and I'm like, no, they're definitely pro-feminism. Like, they want the women to be strong and commanding.
Yeah.
But they definitely are leaning them more towards the butch side. And I thought I was imagining it, but then I read an article, like, Rebecca Romaine Stamos actually had to fight for her outfit. She wears a skirt on the show, and she asked for the skirt. I said, well, we're not doing skirts. And she's like, why not? And she had a big argument with them about it. She wanted to wear the skirt. So they kind of compromised where it's still a short skirt, but they seem to have, like, leggings on underneath it. But I definitely think they're like, oh, we want this to be the non-sexist Star Trek. And I'm like, it's okay if your actress says she wants to wear a skirt, let her wear a goddamn skirt.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with having feminine women in the future. I mean, I am not feminine in any way, shape, or barely feminine. I shouldn't say I'm not at all.
Yeah.
But I do find that, like, it makes me a little sad how they seem to be shying away from, because I think you should, you can be tough and feminine.
Definitely.
I think is the problem, is that they feel like they can't be.
Well, and I mean, I will say that Una has become one of my favorite characters on the show.
Is she still married to John Stamos? Did I misname her?
No. She's married to Jerry O'Connell.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. So she's like Rebecca Romaine O'Connell.
She never took the O'Connell, so I think she's just Rebecca Romaine.
Yeah, sorry. Like, I apologize. I know she's not Stamos anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not apologizing to you.
Well, I'm saying she just has further sci-fi roots, now that she's with...
well, now Jerry O'Connell is on Lower Decks, so it's like a Star Trek family.
And Quinn Mallory sliders, so, enough said.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
I will never. It deserves as much praise as it can get. Please listen to my Just Another Fanboy episode to learn more on that. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, I truly dig what she's brought to another character we saw very little of, because past the pilot, we didn't get any of it.
And mind you, number one from the pilot, like, it's hard for me to say Una Chin Riley from the pilot, because she didn't even have a name back then.
Yeah.
Is actually possibly one of my favorite characters, because she's just cold and analytical.
Yeah.
They basically took everything about that and stuck it in the Spock.
Exactly.
Because Spock is a little more emotional. And I found it weird. Like, again, it makes me feel like some of the people who work on Star Trek now don't seem to understand Star Trek that well, because they're like, well, I want to explore how he went from, like, that emotional Star Trek into, like, this colder, this emotional Spock into, like, this colder Spock. And I'm like, you could just get older. You don't have to explore it. Like, that's the problem with TV in general. It's not even a Star Trek thing. It's literally just all media. We don't need to know the origin of every little thing. We don't need to know where Han Solo's blaster came from, or where the name Han Solo came from.
But also, that's the trapping of a prequel. Is feeling the need to do that.
Yeah, well, we seem to be obsessed with prequels in general as a society.
Please.
Because you think about the fact we just had the Obi-Wan show, which I enjoyed.
Haven't gotten to it yet. I will.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a little slow, I would say, in the middle. Of course, there's also the upcoming Game of Thrones prequel with Matt Smith. That's going to be super weird.
There's going to be a Stranger Things prequel, supposedly. They're working on that.
Yeah, I really don't get it. I'm like, I don't want to go back. I want to go forward, especially if it's a sci-fi show. I don't want to go visit the past. But I think part of the problem is also that with technology advancing, they know that alters the way they can tell stories.
Right.
And they don't want to be limited by that, because I know a lot of the writers hate the replicators because they think the replicator solves too many problems.
Okay.
Honestly, I just say, well, you're clearly just not good enough at your job. Because I think
there's tons of things that replicators can't do.
Yeah, well, you can just write limitations into it. But the thing is, the Orville has replicators, and it's never been an issue on the Orville.
Yeah.
Like, they just write around it. They just ignore it. They basically decide to focus more on social issues than material issues, I guess that's the best way to put it, because, like, a lot of plots, a lot of war and conflict in this world is based on scarcity. And of course, the idea of Star Trek was that it was supposed to be post-scarcity.
Well, how about Prodigy with the shuttle replicator?
That thing is crazy. It's basically a 3D printer that just builds whatever ship you need.
It's like, pretty awesome. Yeah. I mean, it also has its own limitations, because it takes a while for it to do it. It's not like it's on an automatic, voila, you have a ship,
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I like some of the technology. And again, I'm pimping things I wrote, because I also wrote about how Star Trek Prodigy, like, what I think is its greatest strength is that it makes the Star Trek universe kind of, I don't know, mysterious and wondrous and amazing again.
Yeah.
Because it's a show about have-nots. This is, if it's a post-scarcity society, like, you know, basically it's a show about people who don't live in that society, who would like to live in that society.
Right.
And again, that's why it's weird to me to be like, oh, it restricts our storytelling. I'm like, clearly the Hagemans do not believe that. They're like, we take people who don't live in that. Basically, it's an immigrant story.
Yeah.
It's people trying to immigrate from a place that they don't have what they need to thrive, and trying to get, even though the big plot twist is now like it's apparently a stolen ship and they know they have to start running, you know?
Well, in that way, I mean, it's always reminded me a little bit of Farscape, and now we just get even further into the whole
with the
Farscape
prisoners
thing.
because,
Definitely. But there's still so much you can build upon with that. And I look forward to wherever the hell this, you know, second half of the season is going to go. And it's already been renewed for season 2, so we know that there's going to be more to go.
Yeah, well,
that.
they've already, when I interviewed the Hagemans, they said they just finished writing episode 30. So
good.
You know, we're good for 40 episodes at least.
Now with Strange New Worlds, for the most part, I would say that it is a prequel done right, just because it feels like it belongs in a way that I would say Rogue One felt like it belongs with Star Wars.
Yeah, well, I think it helps, and I think this is what also helps Rogue One, is to be a contained story.
Yeah.
Like, if Strange New Worlds was trying to do an ongoing story like Discovery did, it would run into too many problems.
Yeah, you have to transport them to frickin' 29th century. Like, that's why they did that.
I mean, the thing is, we don't know if they were planning that all along, because you have to remember the episode of Short Treks. You know, the one with,
right.
Why am I blanking up his name?
I know what you mean, though.
Yeah, the one with Zora, the ship, and she basically starts up a relationship with this dude, and he just wants to go home. And it is set, it's supposed to be like, how long have you been waiting here, Zora? Which is also Discovery. It's like, oh, it's been like 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And she's still waiting. And we still have not seen that yet.
No, we have not.
So, but the thing is, that came out before Discovery made this jump.
Right.
So it was in the cards for a very long time. Like, they clearly had planned it way in advance.
Not to mention, it was originally Brian Fuller's show, and he had a very different idea for Discovery than what we wound up getting, which is also, I think, one of the reasons why season 1 is so disjointed, is that honestly, a lot of it was pre-planned.
I think the part of the problem is a lot of people are treating TV as, like, TV shows as just big movies. And if you know you're getting X amount of episodes, I get that, but a lot of TV shows still don't have that security.
Right.
Even if you're streaming, like Netflix is canceling shows left and right.
Oh, yeah.
And so are some of the other streamers. And if you don't know what's going to happen, you can't plan ahead like that. And honestly, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Like, if you have to, when you work on a show, you are working with, let's be honest, hundreds of people.
Certainly.
Who have all their own wants and needs. You never know when a director's going to be like, oh, I just got an offer to do a new Star Wars movie.
Right.
Or your actor's like, hey, I just got cast in a new Walking Dead spinoff. Or somebody's like, I just want to get out of acting entirely because I just had 2 kids and I want to spend time with them. Like, you know, you were working with all these people who, you know, they have their own lives. I mean, even if they're under contracts, shit still happens.
Yeah.
You know, like Lost.
Oh,
you remember,
my God.
Lost was a freaking cursed production where it was like, oh yeah, Michelle Rodriguez and it was like the other woman just got into a car accident and it was a DUI. You know,
I mean, same thing happened with Mr. Was it Mr. Echo on that show?
Yeah, that was also like, no, I said that definitely the tailies were like cursed.
Oh, definitely.
In some way.
Yeah. And mind you, that entire series was like, oh, hey, yeah, great. So we're going to craft this story. Okay, great. So you're doing really well. So you have to go for a few more seasons.
Well, that's like Death Note.
Yeah.
Death Note, you can tell, was meant to end at the point where it's basically the showdown between Light and L.
Yeah.
And then instead it goes into overtime. Like, I'm spoiling a 16, 17-year-old series at this point.
Hey, come on. The Duffer Brothers are going to do something with that.
Yeah,
so.
I'm kind of curious what they're going to do. Yeah. Because, basically it's like Elle dies, and then it's like, okay, so here's 2 new opponents for Light.
Right.
And the thing is, like, the creators have never spoken about it publicly, but when you read Bakuman, they make their feelings very well known. Because
absolutely.
In there, the 2 main characters are like, we want to be able to pull the plug. We want to, decide when the series ends. And when we say it's supposed to and it ends.
It ends, yeah.
And I'm like, and mind you, they eventually did publish that as a real series, the Platinum End, I think it's called.
I think so, yeah.
Like, I read the first volume, and I was
Yeah.
like, this is basically the comic that they had in Bakuman. I want to read this shit.
You're not wrong, though.
Yeah, I read the first volume. It was fine.
Yeah.
It was like, it didn't have the same spark that their earlier series, which was like Death Note and Bakuman.
It's like when they made Kujibuki Unbalanced from
Why
from
would you
Genshiken.
do that? It was meant to be a parody.
Yeah.
That bugs me. Like, I mean, Japan is especially bad with that. Like, they take something that's supposed to be a parody and just stretch it out.
Right.
Like, the American equivalent is what, the David S. Pumpkins Halloween special? Wasn't that bad.
Any questions?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad, but it was also wholly unnecessary.
Yeah, because the first like the sketch was good for a reason.
Yeah,
because it
leave
was a
the sketch be. Just leave it be. Like, sometimes you just need to leave things alone.
And, I mean, to go one more anime reference before we move our way back into Star Trek, like, I think of Bleach when it started out as something very, very different.
It was very clearly meant to be a, like, actually horrifying horror manga.
Yeah.
Like, it was supposed to be scary.
Yeah.
And then it became a battle manga. You know, like, in terms of the episodes, it was, like, somewhere around episode 20 when you realize it was veering in that direction.
Yep.
But yeah, when I read the manga, I was like, man, this is some terrifying shit. And then it's just like, oh, you lost me. I would love to read like a new version of Bleach that actually keeps it as a horror manga.
But with Strange New Worlds, like, we already have the idea, like, yeah, so Pike clearly knows that Pike's gonna go beep beep chair.
He's
eventually.
gonna end up in the beep beep chair.
Like, so what do we do until then? Well, we make the decision that even though Pike knows it's gonna happen, he can save as many people as he can along the way, and he can be the best damn Pike he can possibly be.
He can do his job. He can do everything he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's just that one day he's going to wake up and they're going to be like, hey, you got to do this training exercise. And he knows that's the day he's going to get all fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, my problem, like, again, we just watched, we should just talk about the finale at this point.
Yeah.
So the finale basically is Pike has made the decision that he's going to change his fate.
Yeah.
He wants to write a letter to all the kids who are supposed to be in this training session and tell them not to go.
Yeah.
That way he doesn't go, and then nobody ends up getting maimed or killed.
Right.
Because there's like 2 kids who still get killed, and he gets maimed. He saves all the other kids.
Right.
And like him from the future suddenly shows up wearing the movie series movie uniform, the maroon uniform.
Looked awesome, by the way.
It looked great. It is one of the best uniforms that we've ever seen on the show.
Good makeup for the first movie uniforms, which are just terrible.
Some people like them, but yeah, I agree. No, I agree with you. I think they're kind of awful.
They look like surfer suits.
They're
like,
also just really, in general, I dislike any uniforms that show off all your lumps.
I agree.
Some uniforms just do not do you favors.
No
like,
room for give whatsoever.
Yeah, because like the Discovery uniform is also not great. Like they do not do poor Mary Weissman any favors because she gained a lot of weight, which is fine. Like good for you for embracing your truth. I don't know if she was sick. I think she was pregnant also.
Yeah.
And that's great. But the thing is that uniform just totally... It just does not do any favors. So, like, any uniform that I feel like is unflattering to the actors, I'm just, like, against it. The original Next Generation uniforms were definitely a problem because they were just that sleek jumpsuit, which is why they made them into 2 pieces.
Right.
Then they could, hide Riker's gut. You know?
Definitely, which happened a lot.
Yeah, he did gain a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But, like, you didn't mind because, like, the uniform was flattering.
Yeah.
I mean, mind you, the blue Discovery uniforms were fine.
Yeah, they were pretty good.
I'm not loving the Prodigy uniforms because, I mean, they're cartoon, but they're, like, form-fitting, and I'm like...
I love the Lower Decks uniforms. I think those
which
are
are
great.
basically a variation of the whole thing.
Sure.
But anyway, let's not get sidetracked. We could talk about uniforms for, like, 2 hours.
That could be straight up 3 hours of conversation right there.
Yeah. But, okay, so basically it's like he decides, I'm not going to have this happen. I'm just going to tell the kids not to show up. I won't show up. And then, like, himself from the future is like, yeah, you really shouldn't have done that, and here's why.
Yeah.
And Pike gets thrown 7 years into the future. He's still captain of the Enterprise.
The Time Stone.
Yeah, through the freaking Time Stone.
Yeah.
I hate that there's, like, a gazillion ways to time travel in Star Trek. It seems way too easy, honestly.
I agree, yeah.
But, yeah, he gets to see what it's like. Basically, and mind you, this is where the first continuity problem I have comes up, because they're trying to say, like, so he's still captain of the Enterprise. They're trying to say, well, he's still captain of the Enterprise because he didn't have that accident. The thing is, though, is he wasn't captain of the Enterprise when he had the training accident.
Yeah.
Like, Kirk, he had already stepped down. Kirk had already stepped into the role. Because when you watch Menagerie, Kirk has no idea what happened. And they're like, I forget what they said. It was like 3 months ago. It was recent. It was really recent what happened to Pike. So there's a lot of unexplained little bits here. Like, we don't really know why Pike, is still the captain, except that maybe he decided to just stay on the ship.
Which is what I assume really did happen, is that because he knew his fate, he wanted to change his fate as much as possible, so he remains captain of the Enterprise to do as much good as he can in the universe, and basically make up for the fact that he's not.
Yeah, so it's
himself.
7 years later. Kirk should have been the captain, but it's still Pike. Some of the crew has flipped over, some of it has not. So Uhura is still on the ship, but Ortegas is also still on the ship.
Yeah.
There's no Sulu.
M'Benga's still there.
Yeah, M'Benga and not McCoy.
Yeah.
And basically what it is it ends up being... it's the events of the episode Balance of Terror. Balance of Terror... I mean, every Star Trek person who knows Star Trek knows exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't remember, it is one of the best episodes of the original series.
Now that I've seen it, I would agree with you.
Yeah,
immensely.
it's basically just like a game of cat and mouse between the Enterprise and a Romulan ship that crossed into the neutral zone. And, Kirk has to kind of, make the decisions that are least likely to end up in war. He has to stop the ship, but he also has to make sure he doesn't start a war with the Romulan Star Empire. Right. And except now, instead of Kirk, it's Pike, and Pike is going to make different decisions. Yeah. And I get that. That's fine. It's just that the way it plays out, it's like Pike is stupid. It seems to be. Pike is stupid, and it's good that he ended up in the beep beep chair, because if he didn't end up in the beep beep chair, the Federation ends up at war with the Romulan Empire.
Well, at the same time, though, now that I've seen them both, and I see the differences on where they happened... Yeah. You could just you could really just read the differences in strategy between Pike and Kirk. And I think that at least one of the things that the episode of Strange New Worlds brings us is that because Pike is the more seasoned captain and perhaps goes by regulations a little bit more than Kirk would.
I mean, in fairness to Pike, the thing is, though, is he doesn't want to cross into the neutral zone. He doesn't want to do anything that'll start a war. Right. And you have to also face the fact that he knows that whatever is going to happen is going to alter the fate of the galaxy because of the time travel shenanigans. Sure. Which it's the observer effect on the whole thing, so it's already kind of tainted. Yeah. But yes, the key difference is that he is waiting. He sends message to Starfleet, what do we do? Yeah. While Kirk is just we're not going to get the answer back in time. Yeah. So Kirk ends up firing on the ship, and Pike is let's just follow. Yeah. And that ends up making all the difference. My problem, of course, is when they're oh, well, yeah, there's this Captain Kirk, and he's, actually more of, he's kind of a maverick, a wild card.
He's a rebel.
Which, now that you've seen the original episode, Balance of Terror, Kirk is very calculated. He's entirely... And they kept some of his decisions in the episode. He's let's shadow them so that it looks like we're, they can't see us. It looks like we look like an echo. Yeah. But yeah, Kirk is one of the most misunderstood characters, I would say ever, but especially in sci-fi, between him and Han Solo. Yeah. Han Solo, everybody thinks, oh yeah, he's a shoot first, lady love, and I'm like, no, he's an overgrown child who has a crush on a girl, so he keeps pulling her pigtails. And Kirk... he's a Lothario, he's having sex with everything on Earth. I'm like, no, it's actually Spock that has more sex than Kirk does.
Yeah, in the original series, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, so that was the thing with Strange New Worlds, is this is a Spock that fucks.
Although on
Pike that fucks.
Although in Futurama, they do make some amazing jokes about Kirk having sex with everything that moves.
But he actually doesn't in the original series. He's a lot of the time, he's just oh my gosh, shut up. He's actually sometimes it feels outright misogynist. Yeah. I don't mind it because usually the people he's yelling at kind of deserve it. There's Alan, you have to watch that episode. She's such a goddamn bitch. I'm so happy when he yells at her.
But he basically went with the assumption that Starfleet was going to side with him, rather than wait for Starfleet to side with him and then make action.
Kirk was more willing, I think, to get yelled at.
Yes.
But mind you, this is the guy who cheated on the Kobayashi Maru. Yes. So he doesn't mind getting yelled at. It's like in at the end of Inglourious Bastards, when Aldo Rain, Brad Pitt's character, and it's I've been chewed out. It's not so bad. And, they carved the swastika into Hans Landa's forehead. Because he says, I've been in trouble. I'd rather do this anyway,
Oh, Kirk's brother, also still a member of the crew.
That's just, it's interesting. Yeah. When I point this out to you as we watch Balance of Terror, is that the people who surround the captain also make a huge difference. Because in Balance of Terror, Kirk plays off of Spock and McCoy. Yes. And McCoy is very much on we are not getting into a fight. We are not shooting people. We are not going to do that. You know, and of course, you know, Spock was like, it might be logical to do so. You know, like people have always said that they are the id, ego, and superego, and they exist in that trinity. And Pike doesn't have that trinity. Like, some bizarre reason in this version, Spock seems to kind of hate him.
Yeah. See, it wasn't even just him, because even Ortega seemed...
Everybody was really pissy. Ortega's was out of character, I felt, because they gave her the doubter role that they gave to Styles in the original, where she's like, Captain, we have to kill him. Oh my god, look, this guy looks like a Vulcan. I bet Spock knows what to do. Yeah. She got super racist super fast.
I also wonder, you know, because we're 7 years in the future and we don't know exactly what happened immediately before this... Something must have happened where Pike really pissed them off.
Yeah, like...
Either a decision that he made or something went wrong.
I feel like they might end up coming back to this.
Yeah.
And it'll turn out it was a trick.
Uh-huh. Ooh. Okay.
You know, like a future imperfect type thing where it's all like a simulation.
What if it was a Q that came back in time instead of
to mess with him.
Yeah, just to mess with him rather than actually be future Pike. Like,
I don't know.
That could be something.
We don't know where they're going to go with this storyline. I mean, a lot of people thought the episode was brilliant, but I did have a lot of like issues with it because
I enjoyed a lot of it.
It's like it would be good if you weren't trying to make us like this character,
right? And I could see that too. There's a lot for me to enjoy in it because I appreciate a character that is able to actually accept his fate and keep going. And that's what Pike has been established as on the show. And this episode kind of cemented that like, look, there's only so much that I can do. I'm going to do it. There were, however, flaws, and they're inherent in the episode already existing in canon and us seeing what the right choices were, you know, because you're right. It does kind of make Pike look a little bit like a wimp.
He looks like a wimp. He looks incompetent, especially as an older, more seasoned captain. And he just seems to be making wrong decision after wrong decision after wrong decision. And it's really frustrating. Again, this is a character we have to live with. We don't know how many seasons this show's going to be, but we have to live with Pike throughout those seasons. Yeah. And giving us an episode where he basically looks like a boob is just not a great feeling. It's cool that he's like, oh, I'm going to accept my fate. I'm fine with that. It's just, like, again, misunderstanding Kirk, again, calling him a wild card. I'm like, he will change the rules. He doesn't believe in the no-win scenario, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he's actually, as opposed to being Lothario, he's actually really well thought. Like, he reads all the time. Yeah. You know, that's like his favorite.
He cooks.
Well, Pike cooks.
Oh, Pike cooks, exactly.
Pike is a chef and a lover of the ladies.
I love how much cooking there is on Strange New Worlds. It's actually my favorite part of it, that there's just that much not using the replicators.
Strange New Worlds sometimes feels like they took if they asked 1,000 people what they liked about Star Trek, and then they just fed it into a computer. Yeah. Because people are like, oh, I used to love when Cisco cooked, and boop, put that in there.
One thing they haven't done is play a sport yet, which maybe they will eventually.
Yeah, I mean, how many sports did we really have? We never saw Parisi Squares.
No.
I know there was the baseball episode of D69, which I know you love. It's
greatest episode of all time. I adore it. I can't wait for a team to start playing in London.
I need more references to Buck Boat Guy.
Yes.
And of course, we had the highlight episode of Enterprise, which was and that was the same episode that had, what's his face, Clancy Brown in it. So that's the only reason to watch it, is Clancy Brown.
Wasn't there basketball on one of the shows? Like either Enterprise or Discovery, I'm trying to think.
There's racquetball on Deep Space Nine.
Yes,
also.
there is, definitely.
Basketball.
Yeah. I have a vague recollection of there being basketball on Star Trek. I'll have to look it up afterwards. Maybe I'm misremembering.
It's not.
I might be thinking of Orville, to be honest.
That's likely, because Orville is more willing to do more pop culturally stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they're willing to have songs and reference movies. And, you know, because that's the problem with Star Trek has had is... Part of it is like living in the shadow of Gene Roddenberry, and Gene Roddenberry had some like specific rules. He didn't want any like obvious fasteners, you know. He didn't want buttons or zippers on the costumes, which is honestly kind of ridiculous. And he didn't want people like to watch TV or whatever, because he's like, there are more enlightened people. It's really ridiculous because you are making a TV show, and you're like, TV sucks.
Something that I'm glad that future Star Trek shows have corrected is that there's still forms of entertainment outside of plays
and books
they do read. And concerts. Like
classical concerts.
Which
I really appreciate about Lower Decks, because it's like, here's a classical performance, and then it's like Tendi and Mariner come out and do like Klingon death metal.
Yeah.
So I kind of appreciated that. I thought that was like...
Wasn't
really
Pike watching old movies?
He was.
Yeah, he was.
Everybody
Yeah,
was.
exactly.
Started with Voyager, because Tom Paris is like, we're going to have a movie night. Boop-a-roo.
But like, one of the things that struck me was how quickly the shit hit the fan in the finale of Strange New Worlds, because, we're going to wait. Entire Romulan fleet.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's very heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Which... To be fair, I shouldn't be surprised by, because I just said that the premiere was heavy-handed.
Right.
So, and the thing is, again, it feels like they just took a bunch of complaints and shoved them in a blender. Which is why they're like, look, people wanted episodic. We have to give them episodic.
Yeah.
People want to see Pike again, so we'll give them Pike. People want to see a stupid episode, so we'll give them at least 2. I am one of those people that want stupid episodes.
Absolutely.
I freaking love
you
stupid.
need stupid episodes to make the show stronger. I say it again. Like, it's all part of the plan.
There's an entire episode of D69 about trying to buy a baseball card. Remember that one?
Yes. Or for that matter, any of the Ferengi episodes.
Oh, God. Magnificent, what is it called? The Magnificent Ferengi?
Yes.
Yeah, that's...
Oh, so bad.
Yeah, the one Prophet and Lace, which is actually really transphobic when you look back on it. It's, like, super uncomfortable.
Any of the holodeck episodes of Next Generation.
Every holodeck episode.
Yeah.
There's never been a holodeck episode that wasn't at least a little bit stupid,
That is very true.
The Lower Decks episode actually was probably the least stupid.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that one.
That episode was brilliant.
Yeah, but with this too, I think that I completely understand what they were going for in the end.
Yeah,
and I think that they could have executed it a little bit better, but overall, easily the strongest first season of any of the Star Trek shows.
It's interesting because Star Trek is not really known for having strong first seasons.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the original series has one of the stronger first seasons in the franchise.
That's true. You're right.
Like we actually have the TV still on, and it's just sitting there on season 1.
Yep.
And I can see The Devil in the Dark, which in my opinion is the best episode. I love City on the Edge of Forever. I know most people say that's the best. That was actually the first episode I ever saw. But I think Devil in the Dark is actually the best one.
Okay.
Like, I mean, if you want me to sell you on it, why is Devil in the Dark the best one? Because it is entirely about finding a peaceful resolution to what it essentially was a misunderstanding. Because it is, the Horta is going around killing the miners, and the miners are like, oh, this monster, it's killing us, we have to get rid of it. And Spock actually gets in contact with it, and it's like, oh, it's actually killing you because you've been destroying its eggs. And the miners, instead of getting angry, which I think a lot of shows would do, where the angry miners be like, oh, who cares? The miners are
just like, oh, crap.
Oh, shit, we fucked up. And it's like... the amount, and then they agree to work with the Horta in the end, and it's actually very beautiful. It is the prototypical, like the stereotypical, not atypical, every blank typical except atypical Star Trek episode.
Yeah,
because it's about these two groups learning to work together.
Yeah,
and I'm actually really annoyed that it's never been brought up again. I would love to see like a Horta, like Starfleet officer just rolling down the hallway. That.
You make a really good point there. I'm honestly surprised Discovery didn't do that. That seems like a Discovery move.
You mean in the 29th century?
That's what I mean.
Because they can't do it. It's a prequel because we'd never met the Horta
Again,
before.
that's what I mean.
And the Hortas, the whole race dies off and is reborn they could actually bring the Hortas in again. I don't remember if it is every 1,000 years or something.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of things that are... 1,000 years or 800 or 900 years that they could do on Discovery, because I know you wanted to see the Doctor, his copy that was coming from the Delta Project.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, that's one thing I love to see. I'd love to see the Horta. There's a few other things that are like every 1,000 years I wouldn't mind just them doing.
So what do you think about Strange New World's attempt to make a guy in a suit threatening as a main villain?
Are we talking about the Gorn thing?
Yes, the Gorn, yeah.
Which they just turned from guy in rubber suit into, like, CG nightmare.
Yes.
That was not...
Just to make the Gorn a threat. Yeah, no, because that episode in and of itself, it's an alien episode, we get that, but just that they may very well be a continued threat on the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see them more, because you definitely get the feeling it's like they probably would have liked to do them more, but it just looks so stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine, because you think about how Enterprise basically tried to sort of revitalize, redeem the Andorians, and it made them brilliant. Thank you, Jeffrey Combs, who definitely needs to be on every show. I think one of the fan casting is, I can't remember the name of the doctor who's in the original pilot, The Cage. They said that Jeffrey Combs could easily play him.
Absolutely.
I would love to see him just pop in as that character.
That'd be great, yeah.
Yeah. He said nobody's reached out to him yet, so I'm like, so the ball is in Paramount's court.
Do it!
No, I mean, I think when they have an opportunity to flesh something out, they definitely should pursue it. I think the Gorn is one of those. That's actually a really good choice. Fleshing out Dr. Mbenga was good, and doing that episode with his daughter was, again, it was one of the 2 stupid episodes, but it was very good, like where everybody got to act out of character.
Did they know the Tholians existed before the original series episode, or
in the Tholian web?
Yeah.
I feel like, again, I know, I could imagine Raph listening. He's going, blabbing.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't think they knew what the Tholians look like.
Okay.
But, mind you, you have to basically treat anytime they meet almost any alien on the original series that it is going to mostly be the first time. If not the first time, it is a rediscovery.
Human Klingons!
Yeah, we might see a few of those.
I really hope that's the direction that they decide to do. Like that would actually be great.
Yeah,
if we
because
get some
after
human Klingons.
Enterprise went through all the trouble of writing a storyline to explain why some Klingons look more human than others, specifically the ones from the original series.
Yep.
I'm like, just lean into it, use it. It's fine. It's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing, Memory Alpha actually pointed out to me while we were rewatching, he hadn't seen it. I had already watched this finale episode. That pointing out that the Romulans in that episode are actually different from the Romulans in the original series, not necessarily just because of the actors, not just because it's not Mark Lennard, but the ones on the Strange New Worlds version were Northern. Remember?
Interesting.
Which they mentioned on Picard, that the Romulan who has ridges in his forehead is is from the north of the planet.
That's fascinating.
That's how they explain the different makeup things.
Okay.
Is that if they just look Vulcan, they are probably from the south.
Okay.
And if they're from the north, they have the ridge. And they gave a bunch of them ridges. I mean, mind you, yes, this is just a retcon.
Yeah.
We're supposed to ignore that. But I just thought that was interesting.
No, that's pretty cool.
Memory Alpha had to point that out, like, hey, this guy had, the ridges and everything.
My question, too, so this is now yet another thing that Pike knows about the future that could potentially affect things. He knows what the Romulans look like. Before everybody else does, unless this is a memory that's going to somehow fade.
Yeah, we don't actually know what. That's just it. You're right. If he remembers the whole thing, then he also he's met Kirk, and he knows that Spock is destined for greatness.
Well, we know he met Kirk because he was even looking up his.
Yeah, well, I'm saying he now has had all this experience with Kirk, so he knows what kind of officer he is.
Yeah,
I mean, mind you, they were supposed to be sort of friendly because even in the original continuity,
right.
But yeah, you're right. He takes back a lot of knowledge with him that could actually really skunk things up. Saying, "Oh, well, the littlest thing can change the timeline." This is why I've increasingly become of the opinion that the timeline is just self-correcting because, when you try to apply the butterfly effect, any little thing could totally mess things up.
Definitely, and I that's why I also like Marvel theory on the timeline. That if you go back in time and kill Hitler, then you haven't actually changed it in your own timeline. When you go back in time, you've created a reality where Hitler has been killed.
There's just another
exactly. There's just another one out there.
Well, it's not just in Avengers. It's been done in other places.
Yeah.
My favorite version of it was actually Austin Grossman's book. That's Lev Grossman's brother, twin brother.
Yeah. And
he wrote 2 books. This is not a series. I'm just saying I remember he's written at least 2 books.
Yeah.
And the first one was called Soon I Will Be Invincible, if I remember the
yeah.
I've mentioned it to you. It has the greatest supervillain origin I have ever seen. It's to this day, I would still think it's basically that a woman from the future. This isn't really a spoiler because you find out halfway through he's the main character's oh yeah, this is my girlfriend. She's this villainous. She did this. So basically, it's in the future, it's a post-apocalyptic future, and they build a time machine and they send this one woman back in time to prevent their bleak, horrible future.
Yeah.
So she goes back in time. She stops whatever created that timeline, and then when she tries to go forward it's not her timeline anymore. It's the new, happy, wonderful timeline. And all the people she knew are different or gone. You know, everything's completely different. So she goes back in time and tries to re-fuck up the timeline so she can get her reality back.
Wow.
And I'm like, that is, to me, the greatest villain origin
That's
I've
a
ever
very
heard.
Robert Kirkman Invincible, style villain right there. Like, that's pretty good.
It's really deep. It's like, the book has its issues. It's not the greatest book, but that, to me, just, like, justified the entire existence of that book.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good.
But you're right.
Anyone who's read the book is probably laughing hysterically now. Shh, don't spoil.
Well, but especially, like, knowing that Star Trek is going to still happen, that we're still in the Prime universe, as Spock had to call it.
Yeah, he said Prime universe just so you could laugh. Just like Kirk also mentions that his father served on the Kelvin.
Yes.
So just to tie it back into... I honestly thought that was one of the more brilliant things about the J.J. Abrams movies, the Abrams-verse films, was the fact that they actually created a reason that this new reboot existed.
Yes,
so it is technically in continuity.
Yeah, and that all the stuff that we're watching right now can still happen. You know,
back in the continuity, everyone actually gives a shit about.
Yeah. Like, it's the same thing with, Earth 2 and Earth 1 with DC. Like, there's an Earth 2, Star Trek universe, and there's an Earth 1 Star Trek universe. Maybe someday they'll meet, but I don't want them to. Like, that's it.
Can I just make a side note that it still makes no goddamn sense to me in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness that the Illuminati universe would number themselves, what is it, 838, and not number 1.
That's interesting. Maybe it was their favorite. Maybe it was Doctor Strange's favorite numbers or something.
There might have been I'm sure there's a mathematical reason for it. Like they were picking, like they picked the 0 point and then they counted up from there, and they found that. Because if you think about the joke in Into the Spider-Verse, that they have to go back to the beginning, and it's the cartoon universe. Oh, yeah. That you're pointing at me, no, I'm pointing at you. I can't wait for that movie. That's going to be fun.
It's going to be so good, yeah. Anything else you wanted to mention about Trek or Trek adjacent?
I mean, again, I still think of, if I had to rank the current shows, Orville is on top, and I wasn't expecting Orville to be on top. It's just that between the two Topas and the what is it called? The one with Gordon that we just talked about with the time. Like, those 2 episodes were brilliant. The Suicide episode was a little clunky, but I thought it was still pretty solid.
Effective, yeah.
They also did their own version of Identity Crisis. That was that TNG episode. Like, so it's been very good. Like, it managed to come out on top. I would probably put Strange New Worlds underneath that, and then Lower Decks. Lower Decks only loses points because it's the silly show.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to that coming back.
And it's interesting how both Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds ends with a major character getting arrested.
Yes. Very good point.
I really want to know what happens to Captain Freeman.
Oh my god! And I really want to know what the hell happens to Una. Like, whether or not this is the last we're going to see of her for a while.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they got rid of Hemmer. Hemmer's dead.
Yeah,
and I liked Hemmer. I feel like Hemmer could have gotten more character development.
Well, he's not Scottish enough, so
but I think what the point is, though, by killing off this character early, is to basically say no one is safe.
That's true.
Because that was my big problem with this season of Stranger Things. Spoilers for Stranger Things. If you were like, oh, I just want to hear Star Trek stuff, so you can just blink, Ian will give you a little tone.
Thank you. Spoilers!
Yeah. And, I mean, mind you, even like Millie Bobby Brown admitted, the Duffer Brothers are freaking wimps. They're softies. Is that they killed off one of the new characters, Eddie. We all love Eddie. Eddie was great. I knew Eddie was going to die. I just saw it coming, and I hated that. And then they didn't kill off Max. They were planning to kill off Max, and then they decided not to because they're big softies.
Because I think she's going to wind up being one of the main villains next season.
Maybe. I would have preferred, the thing is, I have nothing against Max.
Yeah.
I mean, Max is a fine character. It's just that it made it really obvious that the kids have plot armor, and I don't like that.
I honestly worried that Dustin might get offed at one point because they were aiming towards that. But.
Yeah, as long as it's not Steve. As long as Steve lives.
Well, yes, because Steve is the best of all of them.
We love Steve. I feel like, I don't know if they planned this from the start. I don't think they did. But they definitely leaned into Steve, like, I'm a bad boyfriend, but I'm a good babysitter.
Yes.
Steve, and it's actually really beautiful. Like, his friendship with Dustin and his friendship with the actress is Maya. What's the name? Robin.
Yeah.
Robin. Maya Hawke, who I keep forgetting. I'm like, Maya Hawke, she's Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's daughter. Yes. Oh my god.
And she's an excellent actress.
She's good. Yeah. It's really interesting to see all of these, like, actors and actresses, like, kids showing up, like Jack Quaid, who I can't watch The Boys and not think of Boimler.
Yeah, and that's my problem. Like, if I'm ever looking away, like, if I'm ever, like, watching The Boys while looking at my phone, I hear Boimler, and I have to look back up.
I really want them to shoot a live-action episode of Lower Decks.
That'd be pretty awesome.
With the actors playing their characters.
Why not?
Because they do kind of look like them anyway.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I don't think that's, like, my ranking. Is like, I would put Lower Decks number 3, Prodigy would be number 4, Discovery would be number 5, and Picard would be number 27.
Oh, Jesus.
Holy crap. Like,
now, there were parts of season 2 that I actually really liked. Not the whole. I think the whole had major we have too many episodes issues. And
yeah, they clearly, like, it's like we have to give Picard a tragic backstory. No, you did not.
Yeah.
It wasn't horrible. It was kind of fine.
I thought the stuff with 7 was actually
the stuff
super
with 7
great.
was fine, but like the Picard stuff was a little clunky.
Yeah.
The Agnes storyline was actually pretty good.
I love the Agnes
But
stuff.
my issue with Picard, like, it's the ending of the season made me very angry.
I agree.
Because we spent 2 seasons with these characters, and they just dumped all of them. Mm-hmm. With the exception of Seven and Rafi, everyone is gone.
Well, they could theoretically bring back the Romulan...
oh my god, Laris?
Yes, thank you. Laris
No, I'm not talking about Laris. I mean, about her ancestor dying or whatever that bullshit was.
Well, no. Actually, well, then wait. Who am I talking?
Agnes is gone.
Okay, but
Agnes has not come back.
Who's the fighter? What's
Elnor?
the fighter? Yeah, Elnor.
I believe Elnor is definitely gone. No, it's like after the finale aired, they had some interviews with some of the actors, and like people like Alison Pill said, I'm not involved in season 3 at all. Yeah. And the same thing with why am I blanking on his name? The one who plays Rios.
Yes, and Rios was terrific, but they basically they
shuttled him off. And mind you, they did the whole he lived in the past and he actually did stuff in the past, and I was like, ouch.
Right after this Orville episode where we talk about how that's not the best idea. But apparently he was fated to do this the entire time. I'd like to think the timelines are just self-correcting. He died unimportant.
Honestly, a good chaser for watching Strange New Worlds, watching Picard, and that episode of Orville with all the time travel shenanigans is actually to watch Devs, which I know you have not watched.
I have not, but I will.
Yeah, because Devs that was the FX show, and it also had Alison Pill on it, and it had Nick Offerman.
Yeah.
Why am I suddenly blanking on the name of the main actress? I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's fine.
But she's been in a bunch of this whatever. But the thing is, like, the premise of the show is that this woman's fiance goes to work in this like uber secret division of like the biggest like tech company in the world. Basically, it's like Google.
Yeah.
And he finds out something while he's there that basically freaks him out and ends up getting him killed. And they just tell her, oh, well, like, he killed himself, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, that's bullshit. So she ends up, like, investigating. And I don't want to spoil too much, but a lot of the plot revolves around the fact that they have this giant quantum computer that is, like, predicting the future.
Okay.
So the whole episode is about, like, it's Alex Garland is really obsessed with the idea of predictive models, about how much of what we do, like, we talk about free will, but how much of what we do is still predictable.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I interviewed him about it, because I asked him, I said, it sounds like what you're talking about is Foundation.
Yeah.
Isaac Asimov's book. I haven't actually watched the show. I don't know if they changed anything. The books, I read the first 4. I kind of found them boring, but I still read them all because I'm a weirdo. The premise of Foundation being that this scientist, Harry Seldon, he's like a mathematician or whatever. Yeah. He actually uses math to predict like the next 1,000, 2,000, like the future of society. Like he knows it's going to fall at some point and it's going to come back and it's going to go down. Yeah. Like he's able to predict these big swings. And he actually creates, like, recordings to be like, so I predicted this. This is what you need to do and everything. So basically to guide the society as it goes through the ups and downs of everything he predicted. So that's basically like Devs is in the same model. But it's not a guy sitting there with pencil and paper.
Right. Yeah.
It's a computer. And it's pretty crazy. And the thing is, though, is he's not wrong that we can be very predictable. Like, you think about, we live in this society where the computers, Google and Apple, are constantly like predicting things and giving us what we want. And well, I was going to use as an example, and this is like a story that always continues to haunt me, is the fact that there was Target. Target tracks what you buy, and it's been doing this for ages. Yeah. And it started sending coupons, like, I guess it was automatically, coupons to this one person's house. It was a, I mean, I don't know if there was a mother involved, but there was a dad, there was like a 15-year-old daughter, and it was sending coupons for baby products.
Oh, God.
And the father was like, what the hell is going on? Why are we getting baby products? Like, Target, why are you doing this? Like, he actually complained to customer service. And they're like, oh, we're sorry. The predictive model, we use like this algorithm, and the algorithm notices that pregnant women tend to buy these products. Yeah. So the system just automatically started sending stuff, you know. Right. And he's like, well, my daughter's not pregnant. What the hell are you talking about? And then he goes and talks to his daughter, and surprise!
Yeah.
And it is really interesting because, like, my brother had a baby, and now I'm getting, like, on Instagram, I'm just getting, like, Instas from, like, Montessori accounts. Like, how to, like, raise a toddler in the Montessori fashion.
See, literally the only thing that Instagram or Facebook ever gives me is beer or coffee. So clearly I'm incredibly predictable.
I get beer and coffee. I get food stuff.
Yeah.
I get a lot of New York-based posts now.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of some plant stuff. You know, like... I basically have an old lady's like algorithm. It's really weird. Oh. But I mean, but again, like if you're interested in that kind of stuff, definitely delves into that. Like again, it's about the quantum computer and like what it means for humanity. And it is actually a really good show to watch after watching all these sci-fi shows with time travel plots. Yeah. Because you're like, well, how much do we actually affect the timeline? How much control do we have over everything, you know?
No, definitely. I'll have to check it out because it sounds like it'd be right up my alley.
It's like 9 episodes, so it's easy to polish off, even though you'll be sitting there like can't sleep. Quantum computing will eat me.
I will say about Picard, just to finish that off, like I didn't expect that my favorite part of Picard would involve Will Wheaton showing up at the end.
Oh, good Lord. I didn't hate it. It's just, my main issues with it was a little cheesy. Yeah. And not in the good way, because I already said I love stupid episodes. This was just cheesy. And also, it feels like Will Wheaton literally just happened to be walking by the set.
Yeah, he's like, I go, hey guys, and he's like wearing a jacket. Like,
yeah, it's like an army surplus jacket. He looks like crap, honestly. I'm like, you know, even the other Traveler had better fashion sense than this Wesley.
It also doesn't help that Wesley Crusher has been he was in one of the movies. I guess you could explain that away briefly, but also there was video of him that was on one of the like ride attractions.
Yeah, it was when they had that exhibit. I don't remember if it was in Vegas. Yeah, that there was a little storyline on the video monitors that involved Tuvok and Wesley on the USS Titan, which is Riker's ship. Yeah, and the thing is that could still be in canon. Yeah, like there's no reason that Wesley could not have just like come back for a little while just to hang out with some people.
I guess. I mean, and hell, when you're a traveler, you could do whatever you want. So maybe that's something that he did. That. Yeah. So I think that we're in a very good place sci-fi wise right now. Now, there's just one more thing that they have to do. One more thing. Bring back Stargate.
Oh, boy.
Do it. Bring it back, you cowards. Like, I need me some SG-1, damn it.
So that's MGM.
That's MGM.
Who owns MGM now?
MGM is now owned by Amazon.
So Amazon could easily bring it back if they want to. Amazon needs to get its shit together with its streaming service, though, because they have the worst interface out of all of the things.
Yeah, I'm glad I finally figured out how to turn off previews, by the way, because that was the most annoying part.
Because right now we're in, what people call the golden age of content, but honestly, it's a deluge. It's a fire hose of content. I don't have time. I am currently unemployed, and yet I still don't have time to watch all the shows that are hanging. Well, I finally caught up on Flash. Yeah.
I'm not even caught up on Flash.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's such a bad show. I'm sorry. It just got so bad in the past 2 years. And mind you, we were talking to Donovan, who was like, now it got bad. I'm like, it got bad that I'm noticing it.
Well, the fact that I was watching it weekly for a very long time, and I dropped off maybe like a season and a half.
The pandemic really screwed them over because that Ava storyline really it wasn't great to begin with, and it took a nosedive.
Agreed. Yeah.
I watched all of Disenchanted, which is not great.
I like it. I like the last 2 seasons, definitely.
Well, what I appreciated, and I think they're aware, there's a scene where Elfo is watching this cartoon in a theater, and then later on when he meets, the actress who plays the main character, he's like, you guys just, making it up as you go along? She goes, yeah, and he goes, I knew it. And I feel like that was a comment about Disenchanted, because the storyline is so disjointed. I have no idea what they're doing with it.
It's gotten a little bit clearer over, the last season, I'd say, but yeah, you're right. I think when they started, they had no idea.
When they they brought in sexy Satan, I was just like, okay, maybe something's finally happening on this show.
And in general, I find it funny. Like, I find it funny. I find the plots engaging. I find the voice acting really good.
I think the voice acting is really good. Yeah. I like the animation, the effects. I just think the plot is a complete mess.
Yeah.
I'm like thinking of what other shows have I watched? Like, because have
you caught up on Superman and Lois?
Not yet.
Okay.
Is it up on a streaming service?
I think it's on Max. If not,
it's season 2, because I need season 2.
Yeah, I think season 2 is on Max. If not, it should be on the CW app.
Flash's season 8 did hit Netflix, so that's how I finished watching it.
Yeah.
Of course, now they announced, on the day we were recording this, they announced that season 3 of Bluey is finally coming to Disney Plus. But I'm already bootlegging it, so I don't care.
Doesn't it also eventually wind up on Amazon or something like that? Like, I know, like, Bluey is in other places, not just Disney Plus.
I don't know, because it's BBC partially funded it, so it might be on, like, not BritBox, BBC has their own thing.
Yeah, you know? Well, either way. But I think looking at the Emmys and all the things that were nominated,
everything was streaming or cable.
Yeah.
Like, network had almost no presence on that list, except for maybe, like, Abbott Elementary.
Even This Is Us's last season barely got anything. And,
like,
that
weird.
was...
It's weird.
Yeah.
I feel like, we're in a weird place. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say about Star Trek. I would say watch Severance. Severance is good.
Oh, definitely watch Severance.
Yeah, Severance, I feel like at least they knew what they were going. Since we mentioned Lost earlier, Severance was reminding me of Lost, and I was...
In a good way.
No, in a bad way, where I was afraid that they weren't going to know where to go with this.
Okay.
Because Lost, like, it knew how to hook you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just kept spooling and spooling. Like you said, they just kept going and going.
Right.
Like, I talked to my brother. My brother says, I honestly feel like I wasted 7 years of my life watching that show. Was it 7 years?
I think it was. Yeah.
Like, you feel like, and the thing is, I was worried about that with Severance. I was like, it's interesting. I'm really engaged in these mysteries, but is it going somewhere? But I think the finale gave you enough answers.
Yeah. They stuck the landing.
Yeah, it's enough answers that I'm at least like, okay, there's definitely something to be peeled back here. There's something going on. I'm not going to spoil that one at all because I know less people have seen that show.
Definitely, and if you have not seen it, please get a 2-week trial of Apple TV Plus.
You can watch it really quickly.
And just watch
it goes by really fast.
While you're doing that, watch Ted Lasso because Ted Lasso.
Well, wait for season 3. We are 3? Are we 3?
3 and possibly the last one, depending on what they do with it.
Yeah, so just wait for that to pop up.
Yeah. Oh, and we won't talk about it on this episode, but yeah, Ms. Marvel wrapped up. We watched the finale, and I thought it was great.
I mean, I think we can just have some broad strokes about it. In that, obviously, Marvel's using a lot of these shows to just set up the movies, which is kind of neat, but it's also creating a problem. Like, not everyone's going to watch the shows. Not everyone has Disney Plus. There are people who went to see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and had no idea what Wanda's deal was.
Right.
Like, I mean, mind you, I've already been public about how much I hate those kids because their stupid-ass song about ice cream.
I know.
It's really bad.
I have never seen you sour on anybody more off of one specific thing.
I thought it was dumb when I watched it.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching with my mom, and my mom goes, oh, that's so sweet. I said, no, this is
it's terrible.
And then I was reading, like, Letterboxd reviews, and people were like, I hate those children. I was like, oh, thank God, it's not just me. Letterboxd, like, if you want to read funny shit about movies, I recommend Letterboxd. Has some of the best reviews.
That song about ice cream will make you lactose intolerant. Anyway.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, I think that's the bigger problem is that they are now requiring homework to watch a movie.
Yeah.
At least Thor did not require homework. Not TV homework.
Yeah. That's true.
You kind of needed to have seen the previous movies. We don't really need to go into Thor much. I know you're going to podcast.
Yeah, but also Ms. Marvel for me didn't really require any homework. Like,
no, it didn't. It has no backstory you need to know. The problem is that it becomes backstory for the Marvels.
Yes,
because you're going to wonder, who is this girl? Where is she coming from? Where did she get her powers?
Right.
I think as a society, also, people have lost the ability to just accept things for what they are.
Agreed.
Like, everybody, again, I said this already during this recording. Like, people are like, oh, I need to know where Han Solo gets his name from. I'm like, no, you do not.
No, you do not.
The thing is, you can't even say, oh, well, that's just a consequence of content or good content or whatever. Because I think the best example I've ever seen is somebody talking about, they were talking about Miyazaki films. Like, My Neighbor Totoro. Who is Totoro? Where does Totoro come from? Where are the little things from? Where's the Kappas from? We don't effing know. And you know what? It doesn't actually matter. It has no relevance to this main story that they're trying to tell.
Right.
And I feel like as a society, we're losing sight of being able to just enjoy a piece of media as a singular thing. I think that's partly why like movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once and RRR are revelations, because they don't require backstory, they don't require a sequel.
Right.
They just stand alone, and there's just something beautiful about that.
And that's why part of me almost wishes that Ms. Marvel was just Ms. Marvel, and that we could just have multiple seasons of that, and then maybe eventually she would show up in a movie or what have you, but just let her be the character that she is.
Yeah, it kind of bugs me again that the shows are basically miniseries to set up movies, because that's what Falcon and Winter Soldier is.
Yeah,
and
at least Hawkeye didn't really seem to be that, although it stemmed off of Black Widow, so I guess you can say that.
It's weird. It's also like being used to sort of set up Yelena for future movies. Yeah. But I think Hawkeye is probably a good example of something that does largely stand alone, except for the fact that we're pretty sure they're going to do Young Avengers at some point.
Yeah.
Because they've given us Kate. They've given us... we've met Bradley. Is Elijah?
Yeah.
Elijah, the younger one.
Stature is going to be in the new...
Yeah, we've met her.
Yeah.
I honestly think they probably will put Kamala... Between the vice president and the comic character, I always get the pronunciation.
Kamala this time around, yeah.
Yeah. They always get Kamala, like, I think they're going to put her with the Young Avengers rather than with the full Avengers.
Well, I think they may very well combine the idea of the Champions with the Young Avengers, because the Champions had... Kamala, it had Young Nova, it had at one time Teen Cyclops, so we're definitely not going to get that.
Yeah, we have,
Miles was in the Champions.
Wow,
so like we could very easily wind up combining that with the Young Avengers. Well, we don't know
what they're going to do. We'll find out. Again, we don't want this to turn into the MCU talk. It's mostly Star Trek.
Yeah.
But I think it is interesting to try to look at the Trek shows and how they exist in this larger ecosystem, because Disney Plus is definitely trying to create a trap.
Yes.
Like, it's a gilded cage. They want everybody to watch that because they want, you got to watch the movie, and then you got to watch the show, and then you watch the next movie, and then you watch this show, and then you watch this. And they want to do that with Star Wars a little bit, it feels like. But Obi-Wan, I feel like, I'm hoping it doesn't become required viewing for anything.
I don't think it's going to.
I think it's just an interesting story in itself. And I know some people were mixed on it, but but like with Star Trek, they're definitely trying to create, like, what I found was funny is you saw that this year they added that little intro card,
like the stinger thing,
with that makes the ship, Enterprise goes around and it creates the arrowhead symbol, and that's because Star Wars has had their little intro card with the faces.
Yep. And before that, Marvel even with the Marvel logo.
Yeah, which watching Thor, I was able to see what they slipped in, like Moon Knight and stuff like that.
And Ms. Marvel for that matter.
Did they?
Yeah. She was right after Moon Knight in the
okay.
In the card.
It's hard. It's hard when you see a movie for the first time to like watch for that kind of stuff.
But you're right that Paramount Plus has basically made a Star Trek TV universe.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because I used to complain about CBS All Access. I'm like, I don't want another service because let's be honest, Discovery is not worth $6 a month. It's not that good. I'm sorry.
Evil is really good on Paramount Plus. You should give it a watch.
I watched like the first episode.
Yeah.
But I think Paramount Plus is really coming up in the ranks because they have Yellowstone, right? Yellowstone is them, and Yellowstone's super popular.
Oh wait, is Yellowstone them or is Yellowstone Peacock?
Oh shit, you're right.
I think Yellowstone's Peacock.
Well, Peacock is one of the stronger services too, but we don't watch. I don't watch. You know what it is like one show is Yellowstone and the other has like something called like 1845 or something like that?
and they also have Paramount also has the good the Good Wife spinoff that's supposed to be really good. The Good Fight,
I honestly like Paramount. Like I haven't canceled my cable yet. I'm going to, but I can just watch Daily Show on there now, which is like
that's true.
I'm like honestly that's kind of worth it to be able to watch Star Trek and
South Park is on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, all the South Park specials.
Yeah, I haven't watched the latest one.
Yeah, no, it just went up like today or whatever. But yeah, like and Peacock, of course, has Girls Five Eva. And,
oh my god, yeah,
and Lady Parts and
but yeah,
so much Columbo.
If you want to drop cable and then get every single streaming service, guess what? You're paying more than cable. That's it.
Yeah, there's a collapse is going to come soon.
It has to.
It already started technically. CNN Plus.
You mean the month that it was active?
Less than a month. It was
less
like 3
than a month.
weeks.
That's sad.
And they're just going to put everything on HBO Max, which is what they should have done in the first place.
HBO Max and Discovery merging into one.
They're merging into one. So the consolidation has begun.
Yeah.
I feel like the next fall will be, I can't see Hulu and Disney Plus continuing to exist separately.
Because even outside of this country, they're not.
Yeah, because Hulu doesn't exist.
Hulu is Star in other countries.
So I feel like that's going to get consolidated eventually now that Disney owns 20th Century Fox.
Hulu, ESPN, and Disney really should merge all in
They're going to collapse those,
Yep.
Right now they're selling a bundle, but you don't need all that.
And the reason that I don't have the bundle is because I still have a outdated Spotify plus Hulu where basically Hulu is free for the price of Spotify.
I canceled my Spotify premium after the Joe Rogan thing because I'm like, you know what, I'm not dealing with this
please.
anymore.
Yeah. More power to you on that one. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a good wrap up of everything sci-fi that we love at the moment, Star Trek and Star Trek adjacent. So job well done, I think, all around.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I'm sitting there going, come on, there's got to be another show that I haven't mentioned. No, I've
please, and
there's too much.
We literally cannot mention every single show that we've watched because there's too many goddamn shows.
There's too many
goddamn shows.
That's it. Spy X Family, but not sci-fi. To be fair. I mean, it is sci-fi.
I know. Yeah, and there was at least one person who commented on YouTube on our latest episode that said that they love Spy X Family and they're glad you mentioned it. So
I think I'm gonna pimp it as much as possible.
Yep.
Because right now I am so happy. Like, you know what? This is what I'm gonna end on.
Okay.
I am in a very good place when it comes to TV because for starters, I hate the binging model.
Yeah.
Especially like with Stranger Things, the first 7 episodes, you had to watch them as quickly as possible because all of the think pieces were out by like Sunday and Monday. Yeah. They were all over the place.
Yep.
So I like the fact that Strange New Worlds was once a week and Spy X Family is once a week.
Yep.
Of what else was I watching that was like once a week? I don't know. What are you watching that's once a week?
Well, I mean, all the Star Trek shows were once a week until they were done.
Oh, Ms. Marvel was once a week. Obi-Wan was once a week.
Yep.
And it's nice to just wake up and be like, oh, there's a new episode.
Oh, The Boys was once a week.
Oh, God, The Boys.
Yep.
We're not talking about The Boys, but oh, my God, The Boys.
But yeah, I actually, I'm not much of a binger, and I never really have been. There's a couple of shows where I've to catch up, like in a week I've watched a bunch of it, but I'm not the type of guy who can normally sit down and watch 8 episodes of a show straight.
I don't think we're also not making shows that I actually feel like are really bingeable anymore.
Yes, I agree.
Because here's the thing, is that binging is not new. Binging has existed since at least like VHS, at least tapes, but I feel like more people probably use VHS. Like, we're anime fans, we've all watched anime like tapes that we bought in Chinatown or whatever, and then of course like DVDs came on the market and suddenly you can buy an entire season of a show for like $30 and it just blew my mind. And then now we've moved on to the streaming. But the thing is, what people were binging were older shows. Shows they had usually already seen. Shows that didn't require attention spans. Stuff you can just kind of play in the background and ignore.
Right.
And the thing is now, like, we're in this auteur model, and all of these different creators, like, oh, I can weave in all these threads because I'm not going to be canceled. I don't have to care about ratings. And the thing is, they're not making shows that I can just freaking ignore in the background. I mean, Netflix is still making a lot of garbage, in fairness.
Yeah.
But it does feel like a lot of the prestige shows, they're like, no, you must pay attention.
Definitely.
And I can't sustain that in a binge.
Yeah.
Like, Stranger Things is good enough. I was able to do it, but I'm like, not many shows are Stranger Things.
It's mostly, to me, like, my background shows will continue to be animated. Because that's just, or old sitcoms like that I don't need to pay full attention to. Like that's kind of like,
just be like Raph and watch Star Trek again.
And there you go. We'll just jump back to that.
That's the nice thing about episodic shows. Is you don't have to watch the whole thing all the way through. You can just put on an episode you happen to like. It's
exactly.
Food.
Potato chips. The potato chips of TV.
Oh, I thought you were making a Death Note joke.
I was not, but then I'm going to take this potato chip and eat it. Let the world know where at the moment they can find you, which is mostly Twitter, but either way.
Yeah, I'm still, at Lampbane for that's my personal account, and at Chris Nautis for my professional stuff, so you'll see when I get a new job or if I have any projects in the can. I don't really have much going on. I'm just like having, as our friend David calls it, the summer of Chris.
The summer of Chris.
I'm traveling. I had a traumatic customs experience in Toronto.
Oh my God.
And I'm just hanging out, and I'm trying to read every issue of Avengers because I guess I hate myself that much.
That may be a podcast in and of itself that you might be able to do. If
you want to, come on over and we'll just talk about how Hank was always an asshole to Jen.
I kind of imagined as much.
I don't want to derail this. This will be my final note. Okay. I used to be on Scans Daily.
Yeah.
And Scans Daily loved making jokes about the time that Hank slapped Janet. And one guy was like, it was just that one time, and it was like emotional damage. He was having problems, and you guys just keep running it into the ground. And like people would be like, yeah, because it's funny. I mean, that's all. I know it's awful. Spousal abuse is awful. We all are aware of this.
Yes.
We are not jerks. It was just like, it's such a weird panel. But reading the early Avengers issues, he was such a dick to her.
Well, why don't you go make my dinner, Janet?
Yeah, basically. He was just like, oh, you're going to go put some makeup on? Like, oh, don't bother me. I need, I'm trying to do an experiment here. Go and make me some cookies or whatever.
God.
He does say, like, I need an actual experienced scientist. And I'm like, ooh, harsh.
Well, we'll definitely have to get to some of that fun at a later date.
Yeah, we're just talking Trek. And Trek is...
Yep.
Trek, we're in a golden age. We are very lucky. There is a Trek for everyone. I don't have to like every show. Mm-hmm. That's why I can put Picard number 27 on my list of 6 objects.
Hey, vey. Well, always a pleasure. We'll talk next time about other shit like usual. So that's that with that. Email address for Comic Timing continues to be comictiming@gmail.com. This will be at some point simulcast on the Comic Geek Speak feed, so you can check that out at comicgeekspeak.com. Facebook.com/Comic Timing for comic timing related goods, and also conversation at the Comic Geek Speak super group as well. And you can follow me on Twitter, I_am_sci-fi. I am sci-fi. Hey, we talk sci-fi in this episode. What a concept. So for Chris, I'm Ian. There's always time for comics. And Star Trek.
More Star Trek.
There's Star Trek comics.
There are Star Trek comics, but we're not talking about those.
Maybe at some point.
Levels are fine.
Levels are indeed fine.